Excuse me? So what did you think?
Well, you know, obviously this debate needed the third party to really be able to begin to talk about the critical issues that were avoided in the debate.
Like, such as?
We can start with the DREAM Act, which Schumer did not define as a DREAM Act. He talked about the bio card, and he made it sound so very simple. And yet it was probably the most fascist thing that he talked about this evening. We have a card that every American citizen, not just people who are immigrants, are going to be carrying. Every American citizen must carry that card. That card limits First Amendment rights. We should have the right to be able to move about the country freely. We should have the right to be able to participate in whatever is happening in the country. And any bio card is the beginning, I think, of the end of democracy in the United States.
Did they mention the wars at all?
There was a mention not of the wars in any significant way. I think we had the trade wars that Mr. Schumer and Mr. Townsend worked around by talking about limiting China's currency, when in fact we needed to be talking not about the trade wars but about the real wars, the wars in Afghanistan, the lives of the children there, an illegal war, the wars in Iraq, an illegal war, the war in Haiti, an illegal war, where Haitians are dying now daily by the hundreds. And none of that has been brought up here. I don't think that it's a concern of either of these candidates to deal with the major issues of this economy, the major issues of this society in any very real and substantive way. Yes, Mr. Townsend did talk about the million New Yorkers who are out of work. That's very important to note, that there are a million New Yorkers recently out of work. He did not define that as recent. Mr. Schumer, though, it's very, very damaging in terms of his love for New York. He says he loves it, but he only loves the middle class. He does not love New York. He only works for the middle class. He does not work for New York. I did not hear that from Mr. Townsend. I don't know really where he stands on that, but Mr. Schumer was clear that his work is about middle class and nobody else. He did not talk about what's really happening with hydrofracking. Of course, he says he disapproves of hydrofracking, but thinks that there's a way that one can push that water up and get it up without it polluting the water system of the state and polluting the land. Mr. Schumer's alive, because there's no way to do that. He did not also talk about what's the big ad that's running on Long Island. He mentioned the two Long Island companies, but he did not talk about those bio companies out on Long Island that had running ads on his behalf. Mr. Schumer did not really deal with his corporate sponsorship. He talked about the Supreme Court bill that recently was passed that gives corporations the right to be able to contribute to campaigns, but he didn't get into what that really does in terms of further damage, as this debate tonight is evidence of that damage, that the candidates in New York, most of the candidates were disallowed from being here, and so I can only view it in the same way in which I view Mississippi and Alabama in my growing up years as being no more than an all-white primary, an all-white debate between two white men. Women are not substantively discussed here this evening. No real discussion on what's happening with women and children. Just the continuation of more of the same. It's time that we look at the Green New Deal, look at it realistically. Howard Hawkins talks about a state bank. There's a lot of the issues that are being brought forth tonight in terms of the economy of the state could be dealt with in terms of a state bank that allows New Yorkers to save, that protects New Yorkers' dollars. Mr. Schumer did not get into his deregulation of Wall Street because he did have to deregulate. His bill deregulated Wall Street, created this mass speculation that led to the debacle in the economy that we have today.
Yeah, he actually said that he represents Wall Street, and I didn't hear him say that he represented anyone else.
No, he did not represent anybody else. So since I'm telling a lie, he represents Wall Street.
And when he was talking about the middle class, there's somewhere between a 20 and 40% tax on the middle class for the military, and the $2 trillion that have been spent just in Iraq and Afghanistan, mainly paid by the middle class.
That's right. They will continue to pay it. But the middle class is dwindling. It's becoming a small class, and that's why Mr. Schumer is engaged in this, well, I think Mr. Schumer is engaged in this, obviously, game, trickster game. I call him the great trickster. And this trickster game around the middle class. He's supposed to play with people's heads. He's playing with folks' heads. So we need to Green New Deal. We need a state bank. We need an end to all wars. We need to bring all troops home. And to be very honest, if indeed we tax military industries, we tax those industries engaged with the Defense Department, but at least a 15% tax on them, that would increase our revenue. It would go to the National Treasurer, and New York would then fight for its fair share of those revenues. If we cut military spending, we don't need this big military. We need to cut that spending. We need to cut it by at least 50%. That returns $400 or $500 billion a year back to the National Treasurer. That can be used along with the surtax placed on industries to take care of education, to handle health care, to look at our infrastructure. And more importantly, Don, it can be used to begin to rebuild small businesses, rebuild our farm economy in such a way that our farmers can compete in the world markets, in such a way that our small businesses compete among each other and in the world markets. But it would also be a way of developing jobs and all across the state. We could put solar panels on buildings all across the state. We could put youth to work. We could bring agriculture back to education where it belongs, so that we can feed and house ourselves and not depend on other folk to do that. Right now we're in a crisis, and I don't think either candidate dealt with the seriousness of this crisis. They jaunted with each other and had fun, but the people of New York are paying the price.
Colia Clark,
the rest of the nation.
Thank you. Green Party for United States Senate against Chuck Schumer in New York. Thank you.
Thank you.